a frequent studier of Torah. And so we thought this year we wanted to grant the honor to Stuart Kleeman to teach Torah for us, a frequent studier in these halls and on Zoom as well, correct? So thank you so much for teaching us. We are reading today the story of creation, Genesis 1. Let me just get this for you.
Thank you. Good morning, and Lashana Tova Tikutevu. A healthy, fulfilling, and happy new year to you all. On each day of Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur, we recite the Unatane Tokef prayer. This poem, probably composed at the time of the original compilation of the Talmud, more than a millennium and a half ago, seems to me to present the central theme of these days of awe in a few paragraphs. It essentially states that during this period, God will assess each and all of us and the lives we have led and decide our fates in the coming year. But with teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, returning to the right path, prayer, and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of this decree. For me, this has always been an exceedingly powerful and awe-inspiring prayer. But for the past two high holiday seasons, it has been an extraordinarily personal and painful one. Last year was a very difficult one for me and my family, as our 16-year-old grandson, Zachary, was diagnosed, treated, and ultimately succumbed to osteosarcoma, bone cancer. The support I received from clergy here, as well as other rabbis that I've been privileged to meet and learn from, has helped me through the experience. I wish that each of you might be spared. But the question remains, how can I ever transcend the harshness of this decree? After Zachary died, I felt I needed to go through the formal mourning period, including the daily recitation of Mourner's Kaddish for the 30 days of Shloshim. This is a century-old tradition of our faith, and through it I hope to gather strength and understanding of this heretofore inconceivable fate for our dear Zach, and to help me and my family through this ordeal. As we do not have a daily minyan at TBE, Rabbi Sherman was able to connect me with the rabbis at Temple Umunah, the conservative congregation in Lexington. This congregation welcomed and supported me during this most difficult time and continues to provide an additional Jewish home for me. As I tried to translate for myself the often rapid-fire pace of davening of Shachrit, as well as making liberal use of the translations on the facing page, I began to develop an understanding of the messages of the prayers, including the daily recitation of the blessings that offers gratitude for daily miracles, including the renewal of our lives. Translated, it says, "Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who made me in the image of God." This term, in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim, first appears in the Torah in the parsha that will be recited today, Bereshit. It is composed of the first two chapters of the first book of the Torah. The first chapter is a description of all we know on earth and beyond. All is created from tohu vavohu, chaos and emptiness, and what a creation it is. Over 5 biblical days, the universe, the earth, the skies, the heavens, the seas, and almost all flora and fauna that inhabit them come to be. Then, on the next biblical day, eons in geological time, humanity, male and female, is created. Not only is humanity created, but humanity is created, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. This is mediated by the sharing of God's Spirit in the Shama HaChaim, the Spirit of life, by breathing the breath of life into the nostrils of Adam, humanity. How are we to understand this phrase, B'Tselem Elohim? No visual iconic image is presented in the Torah. God is described as sensed in a burning bush, pillars of fire and clouds, and we are enjoined in the second commandment to have no other gods before Adonai, to not make images of anything in creation, and not to worship them. I'm sure many of us as children envisage God as an elderly gentleman with flowing white beard, sitting on a magnificent throne high above the skies, controlling absolutely everything. If you watch Stephen Colbert late at night, you may even occasionally see the host conversing with such an image. However, sages such as Maimonides, the preeminent medieval Jewish scholar and leader, has stressed God's incorporeality, that there is nothing in anatomical form, physical powers, or human sensations or feelings which are of God. So what does this phrase, describing all of us, mean? Here are some thoughts about this concept from some of the Jewish thinkers of the past 100 years. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel was a descendant of a prominent Polish Hasidic family who immigrated to this country, where he exercised profound influence over the training of American rabbis and Jewish scholars in the mid-20th century. Heschel has written, "What determines one's being is the image one adopts. To perform deeds of holiness is to absorb the holiness of the deeds. The good deeds are for the sake of man. The goal is not that the ceremony be performed. The goal is for man to be transformed." Rabbi Arthur Green was a student of Heschel's and has been one of the foremost teachers, scholars, and innovators in American Jewish life since the 1960s. Paraphrasing Art Green, God is immanent. God is within all people and all things. God is an integral part of each of us. He writes, "We are called upon to affirm the lesson of Tselem Elohim, the truth that every human life is sacred. We see justice, decency, and civility to one another as universal imperatives." In the Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, the Talmudic masters wrote, "The world stands upon three things: on Torah, eternal wisdom, the cultivation of awareness; avodah, worship, the struggle to open the heart; and gelut chasadim, on deeds of kindness." The late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks was the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom. His work and writings have had a profound impact on Jewish and general ethical and moral thought through the last 4 decades. In his writing, Sacks expands on the statement of the Mishnaic sage Ben Azai. Every human being, regardless of class, color, or creed, carries with him or her the image of God. This is the essential principle of Torah. He emphasizes the importance of righteous interaction with society. He quotes Genesis 2:18. "It is not good for man to be alone," suggesting that belonging to a group is essential to the sense of identity. He goes on to refer to chapter 23, verse 9 in Exodus. "You must not oppress the stranger. You know what it feels like, for you yourselves were strangers in the land of Egypt." These thoughts and messages of these contemporary Jewish sages convey to me the essence of what being created in the ongoing process of B'Tselem Elohim means to me, as well as reminding me of the support and solace I receive by belonging to and participating in such groups as Daily Minyan, Torah study, and other Jewish learning activities in the TBE family. But how do I fulfill the expectations that are intrinsic in this gift? And how did I come to my fascination with this concept, and what does it truly mean to me? Several years ago, I was privileged to join one of Rabbi Ullman's Torah study groups. His translations and the implications of many of the words in the Hebrew text often did not quite match the standard JPS translation. Frustrated by my perception of interpretation rather than one-to-one translation of words in biblical Hebrew, I decided to renew my Hebrew education after an almost 6-decade hiatus. Alan directed me to Rabbi Rachmiel Langer, who has been my guide to reading and understanding the text in the original language. My concept of the ambiguity of the language gave way to an appreciation of the richness of each word and an ability to appreciate far more than the standard translation provided. My ongoing participation with our wonderful group of seekers, now led by Elisa Enti, have been that much richer, even though some of my interpretations might have been a bit of a stretch, and certainly some have completely missed the mark. Over the last year, I've tried to pay more attention, both to my understanding of and the standard translation of the Torah, the prophets, and the prayers that we recite. It is our congregation's practice from the High Holy Days to chant the initial several verses of the Torah portion and the Haftarah. I felt there were some messages in the Partial for the High Holidays that might be missed by the recitation starting at the beginning of the passage, with the limitation of only going several verses into the chapter, such as we saw yesterday, the interaction between Hannah and the priest Eli, and we'll hear next week in Isaiah's exposition of the true meaning of the Yom Kippur fast. I discussed this with several of the very receptive members of our clergy, and the verses of Bereshit that will be chanted this morning, much later in the story of creation, reflect for me what is the more personal message of these chapters. As I've continued to attend Minyan a few mornings a week, I've found that beginning each day with reminders from the Siddur that will hopefully lead me to attempt to think and behave b'Tselem Elohim. This is the language describing what we ought to strive for in our daily lives, which is found in Shacharit, the morning prayers. We're admonished not to insult the deaf, nor to put a stumbling block before the blind, nor render an unjust decision. We should judge our neighbors fairly and love our neighbors as ourselves. Our task in life should be to work for the good of humanity by bearing the burdens of others, giving bread to the hungry, clothing the naked, and taking the friendless into our homes. We should try to avoid error, sin, transgression, and disgrace. We ought to avoid wicked people and corrupt companions. We should all honor our parents, engage in deeds of compassion, deal graciously with guests, visit the sick, provide for the needy wedding couple, and make peace among people. And give thanks to Adonai Eloheinu, who has made us in the image of God. I'm reminded daily from the Shacharit liturgy how I can be a better person, be more aware and considerate, and strive towards those three admonitions in Pirkei Avot: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim. I hope they have helped me and will continue to guide me to be a better husband to my dear wife, Terry, a better father to our daughter, Jennifer, and a better friend to each and every one of those individuals whose support during this difficult year has been so important to me. I will endeavor to be more considerate, helpful, and understanding to all of those with whom I interact now and in the future. May the spirit of our dear Zachary of blessed memory continue to inspire his parents and grandparents and all who are fortunate to share his lives, inspired by his memory in b'Tselem Elohim. And may teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah continue to help me in trying to deal with this harsh decree. As Rabbi Heschel so eloquently put it, you cannot make God's image. You can only be God's image. I want to thank all of them and all of you for the honor of addressing you and sharing some of my thoughts. Blessings to you all.